Welcome to my channel, and today I'm going to be interviewing Christina Zaczkowski. And the reason I'm interviewing her today is that she runs a YouTube channel where she talks about spiritual abuse and all topics that are connected. So thank you so much for talking to me today, Christina. And I was wondering if you could just give us a little bit of background of what this channel is about and what you do on it.
Yeah. So thank you for the opportunity. That's really exciting. My husband said, so the hunter becomes the hunted. So thank you for
That's great. I like that.
Yeah. So by education, I am an educator. I studied education and my majors were German and theology.
Mm-hmm.
So back in Germany, where I'm from, I've been in the States, Minnesota now for the past 11 years almost. I graduated there, but during my time in college, I joined a cult, but they usually don't tell you that they are a cult. So I did not know what I got myself into, and I didn't understand what I had gotten myself into until it was obviously too late and I couldn't escape. But long story short, they kicked us out. We came to the United States, where my husband is originally from Minnesota, and I tried to live life. And we started a video production company because those were our passions, to be creative. And so Truth and Motion Studios was the name of our production company. By now, we have ceased to work as a production company just because my husband kind of, after 8 years of that, was kind of like, oh, I would like to do something different. But we had this little channel for our clients. And I had this vision for myself as I went through a long process of understanding what happened and deconstructing and reconstructing, where I wanted to really shed light on spiritual abuse. And in my mind, I had this 5-part series that I wanted to film. And my husband helped me produce it. And so I contacted the authors of The Subtle Power of Spiritual Abuse, which is kind of a bombshell of a book. It's huge. Everybody knows it. I read it in Germany, which opened my eyes. And they happen to live not far away from here. And I actually had to hunt them down personally. And so we had a little bit of a relationship because it was local, but also I was able to actually get them. And so, yeah, we had these 2 interviews, and they were supposed to be 3. But then, unfortunately, we never were able to come together for the 3rd part. But I wanted to also interview Brian Zahnd, and I wanted to tell my story. So those were supposed to be the 5 videos that I just wanted to upload on our video channel. And I didn't have this idea, oh, I'm going to start a video channel on spiritual abuse. It was just a convenient way to get it out. And so that's kind of how that happened. And then people started to just click subscribe in very small numbers, but suddenly I had 200 people, and I'm like, oh, maybe this is a thing. Yeah, and so now I'm at almost 800.
Wow.
So I'm obviously not very good at marketing myself, but that was kind of the way it started. I didn't plan to have it.
That's so interesting that it started as a video production company, and then you wanted to use that company in order to tell your story, in order to explore spiritual abuse. Wow, that's really neat.
It was, yeah. And then it was really David Johnson, the co-author of The Subtle Power of Spiritual Abuse, who encouraged me. I told him that I'm trying to write this book, and he said, tell your stories. That's it. That's your message right there. Tell your stories. And that's kind of what the channel became. I am just telling my stories, and I take people into the process of deconstruction and facing particular issues, from certain weird spiritual things that you're supposed to believe, to what is that like the first week after being kicked out of a cult? What do you do when you don't know anyone anymore, or you think you're gonna go to hell? How do you survive that way?
Yeah. Wow. So what was that like, telling your story and then putting it on the internet like that? Like, if you think back to when you first started doing that, what kinds of inner experiences did you have?
Well, I think my life was, I always wanted attention, and that had a lot to do with a lack inside of me. And so suddenly the part of the processes behind the scenes was also that I was taking acting classes for a while. And then I had like an awakening moment where I realized I don't want to pursue fake stories anymore and put my real self into it. I want real stories to be told. I want myself, my own story to be told. And it turns out for people who used to crave attention at any level, like negative attention, whatever, just somebody please tell me I matter, that I am existing. When that shifts to I want attention for when I'm telling something that's important. It's very different. So it was very precious what I put out there, but I didn't attach any expectations on it. So it was more like leave it or take it, whatever. And so I think what surprised me was how quickly people reacted. The very first comment that I got on my channel that, you know, it wasn't officially my channel, but someone left this like barf of a comment, and it was surprising because how did they find my video and why did they watch it and then leave such a negative review? It was just like, oh, here's a person.
A negative review.
It was a very negative review, and it was so bad that my husband, who gets the emails because it's through his account, he deleted it right away. He's like, no, nobody's going to talk to my wife this way. So then I wasn't even going to know about it, but then he told me because, yeah, just wanted me to know. And so, but that was just one time. And ever since then, people from around the world have reached out in emails and told their stories, asked for help. And I've just realized, yeah, I'm just one of so many. But I'm in a place in the process, in the aftermath, where I think I can offer direction in hopefully a more healthy like reality in a more hopeful future.
Yeah. Wow. Are you willing to talk about your experience in entering that cult and then getting kicked out?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. What was that like? And I guess what were the signs that, wow, this isn't what I thought it was. This isn't what it was advertised as.
Yeah. It was like a college outreach. That seems to be a very common thing, that Christians or any religion is trying to recruit new people on college. Now, I wasn't a new Christian. I was raised Baptist, and but I found myself in a stage of life where I did go to college, but I was really depressed, and it was kind of a lifelong thing that I carried with me, and my faith was one of my lifelines. And so when I met those people, it just, something in me just told me, stick to these people. This is going to be good. And then they were very charismatic, and they offered a very time-intensive program, which I needed because I was in this new town. I didn't know that many people. I hated to be alone. I needed attention. And so they gave me all that. It was all came at financial cost. It all came at, well, time cost. And it also very soon came at, oh, it's not a choice anymore. I'm expected to show up. Oh, now I'm expected to cancel all my plans, drop everything, and show up because the Lord is saying something very important right now. All the way to breaking up with my fiance from that I sort of met through the group. It's all very complicated, but breaking up with him, breaking up with friends locally, not going to my sister's wedding. All sorts of extremes.
Oh, so a lot of control over your personal decisions.
Yes.
Okay.
And all that in the name of, we see something in you, and if you trust us, we'll help that come to fruition.
Oh, okay. Like, we know you better than you know yourself.
Yeah. And we know what God thinks about
right.
you.
Yeah. So then when you bring in that God element, how can you possibly say no? Because that part of it was really important to you.
Yes. And at first, of course, it started out with positive affirmations. So first, it was all very edifying, even to the point where my parents said, whoa, this is good. You're on a good path now, suddenly. Because I seemed to be getting really sure of myself, and they considered me someone of respect. But then it all changed to the point where even what they promised me was in my future, under their care, was taken away. But then it really was a test of how much are you willing to die to your flesh, you know?
Right.
Because if I leave because they're telling me I'm not going to be special anymore, then
Mm.
who was I? You know, I was just there to be special. And I mean, it was true. I wanted to be special, but boy, did I die to that idea of being special.
Right. Yeah. And then how did religion come into that, you know, to kind of strengthen those messages?
Well, it was a mix of Christianity that was foreign to me. I want to say it was a mix in the evangelical world, Pentecostal, charismatic. As a Baptist, I hadn't known that the Holy Spirit was supposed to do anything. And so that was exciting to me, to, you know, all that dreams and visions. And I seemed to be really susceptible to having stuff happen in my brain and then sharing it, and then people are like, oh, that's me you're talking about. And so it's like, oh, they're teaching me to be, it's like a wizard school, they're teaching me to become a better, spiritually higher Christian, better.
Right. Gifts of the Spirit and exercising those.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I'm so powerful and so important, and everybody else is so lukewarm, and I have to abide by a very rigid lifestyle now to not grieve the Spirit.
Okay. So what was that rigid lifestyle?
You know, they would say I was never really in it because I slept mostly through the night. They expected us to sleep 3 hours or so.
Wow.
Yeah. I needed to sleep. Yeah. And
you're human. That's
right. Seems no brainer. But in the Lord, you know, in the power of the Lord, the leader.
Right. You can do anything. You don't need those like normal human things anymore.
No, really. You don't need friendships. You don't need community, any of that. It's all in the group and between you and God, because even in the group, I was kind of alone at times. I want to say that I was there for 3 years, and I have my closest friend from the group got out of that group this past January, or better, like sometime last year, a year ago, but we've been in touch since this January. And so she was there 10 years past me. And she can tell stories too, but so her life was incredibly more controlled because the group is just so small. So very small that she was one of the handmaidens, if you will. And not that there was like, as far as I know, there wasn't any pregnancy trying to happen, but he certainly made attempts to, he told her in a drunken stupor that he wanted to have children with her. So of course a married man. So what I was gonna try to explain more of what the life looked like. It was basically, I was going to college, so I had quite a bit of flexibility, but also responsibility.
Right.
You go to college.
You're busy.
Yes, but also you have off times. And so I just gladly offered my off times. But when I was in the beginning told I was going to become a prophet, I ended up, by the time I was kicked out, I was the cleaning lady of our temple. So there wasn't much left anymore. Also, I attempted in music. I wrote a lot of songs in that time. But then I was told I don't have the anointing for that. So unfortunately, my life was, I wanted to do things, but they had the last word. Another example is I was a little bit attempting to be an actress, and there was a company where I every once in a while would get hired. It was crappy TV, like Judge Judy style crappy, but it paid really well. And for me and an aspiring actress, it was really exciting, but they made me quit there. And so when I got my last offer, I had to say, sorry, I'm a Christian. I can't do this anymore. So I had to answer the telephone and jump and listen to their, whatever it was, change whatever it was. And that was a normal day.
And so that lasted for 3 years. What brought it to an end?
Eventually my ex-fiance came from Minnesota to Germany and apologized to the leaders and joined the group and was able to propose to me again. And we sort of before it's a little bit complicated, but this was our proposal that where we were like, yeah, we're gonna get married. So it was real. It was amazing. It was crazy. Quite the story. But that was at that point on, we were a unit, and I wasn't going to break up with him again. Before that, it was a lot of, oh, what's the Lord saying? I don't know. And what are they going to say? Because they called him a spiritual baby, not fit for a woman of my caliber. And
wow,
the arrogance, just so painful. Yes. And so he jumped through all those hoops, and eventually we got married by them. I graduated, and I want to say something inside of me over the course of the time there. It's accumulative, the hypocrisy, incredible lack of love, but we call that love because what our very spiritual understanding of love is obedience to God. So whatever you do out of obedience to God, which is just doing what the leader tells you to do, don't worry about it. That's love.
That
and
is love.
if people call that evil, it's on them. They're wrong.
Right.
They don't understand.
God's ways are above our ways.
His thoughts are not our thoughts.
Right. Yeah, those can just be used in so many different ways.
Yes.
Yeah.
Endlessly.
Wow.
So I want to say that we may have spoken up a couple too many times, and then we actually discussed leaving, but only because I had a dream. And I was listening to all my dreams, and we all had dreams, and but my dreams, this particular dream was very practical. It was my husband taking my hand, leading me out into the desert, and there wasn't a way back. And I woke up with that, and then I didn't say anything to my husband, and he at the breakfast table was like, I don't feel welcome in Germany anymore, I want to leave. And so I told him, I just had this dream, because we didn't dare to just go saying, you guys are crazy. I don't know what you're doing here, but it has nothing to do with God or Jesus. But we weren't able to do that because the fear of hell. You leave, you go to hell, you die, you have a horrible.
Okay, that's what you were taught. Like that groupism destined for heaven, but if you're not part of this group, then you're not.
So I want to say it was pretty clear that was it, but when pressed, they would be careful to answer that.
Okay, right. Kind of that like sleazy language.
Yeah. So you definitely forfeit your servitude to God. And what does Jesus want? But that you believe the one who sent him. And so he speaks through the leader. So if you don't believe the leader, you're not in cahoots with God. And if you're not in cahoots with God, you're in cahoots with the devil. And so you go to hell.
Right. It's kind of that like black or white dualistic categorization of everything.
Yeah. So when we get kicked out, we didn't know, what do you do, laugh or cry? And thankfully we didn't return, because we had actually been kicked out a few months before. And but then we came back, and this time we didn't. We left.
Okay. What do you mean by get kicked out? Like, was it an actual like leave?
Yeah.
Or how did that work?
That's what they do. They call people or tell them in person, you're out.
Wow.
Yeah, you are so disobedient.
So it's a very strong line that is drawn. You're either all in or you're all out.
Exactly. Okay. All in, all out. Yes.
Right.
To the point where when you left, you have to throw away that stuff that people gave you because it's demonically charged. So yeah, now you have to be shunned. Yes, all of that.
Oh, wow. Mm-hmm. So what were your feelings when you left, when you got kicked out and that was it?
It's multi-layered. It was a sense of relief, but also a great sense of now we're on our own, and what if we made a mistake? Yeah.
What questions were going through your head?
When are we going to die? A few days after that, I developed a very bad, I've never had anything like that, urine infection, urinary tract infection.
Yeah.
Bloody. It was so nasty. We had to go to the emergency room in the night. It was winter. We locked ourselves out of our apartment, so we had to call the key service in the middle of the night.
Oh.
That felt like it. This is it. This is all what we deserve. Like, this is what our life's going to be like.
Right.
Yeah.
And
But
through the eyes of that group, I imagine that there'd be those voices of, yeah, this is what happens when you
we left
yeah,
the covering.
when you don't submit.
Yeah, this is on you. You left our apostolic covering.
Mm.
This is going to be a rough ride for you guys, but you chose the flesh. And but this it was both great hope, but also great fear. And this fear that night when we were sitting in the elevator waiting for the key service really was met by, you know, whatever it was came to me, and we were sitting there freezing. I was sick, and we were crying out to God because we were still, you know, like we don't mean to tell you we don't like you. We just can't live this life. This is just not, like, whatever it is, it's not for us. We didn't have any words of abuse or a cult or anything like that in our minds. And into that, I had in my inside, like, you know, like a vision. Sometimes you have daydreams or something. And it was something like that where I had this strong sense, no, God is coming for our rescue. And whatever that was, it rose up inside of me and at least helped us to survive the next few weeks until we left the country. And then were welcomed here by my family-in-law, who provided a lot of support and support.
Wow. So that wasn't your plan to go to the US, right? And or was it?
Well, I, as a kid, had in my head that I'll end up in the US, and I don't know why. I was not a very, I was a slow developing child, a late bloomer or whatever. I thought the USA was right next to Germany because of the DDR, or what you call the GDR. And in my mind, these three letters were interchangeable. So every time I heard of the USA or the GDR, it was the same thing. I thought it was next door. I was going to end up there.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've had a love and openness to the US always. And so that I didn't know how I would end up there, but it just kind of certainly was on my inside. Like, I was open to the idea. And so I did internships in Canada and in Minnesota. And that's how I met my husband, sort of, through that. And so I was open to going to the US, and he certainly wanted to return. And I was graduating college, so I would have either started working or started a new life.
Wow. So you arrived in the US and you needed to make a new life for yourself. And what was that like? Because I imagine your relationships were very enmeshed with this group that you had been kicked out of. Is that true, or what was that like?
Yeah, there weren't many people left in the group, so I didn't know that many people in the group, but they were my tight people. Everybody else was not trustworthy. We didn't even dare to tell my parents that we were kicked out until a week later or so. And we didn't even say that. We kind of made a side comment like, yeah, we're not part of that anymore. Something like that. And they were like, what? So you're not part of that anymore? Because by that time they knew it was evil. It was like human control.
So they were seeing it that way before you did.
Oh yeah.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. Just because of all the choices that I made and the pressure I was always under. I didn't live at home, or in my hometown.
Yeah.
But what they saw from the little bit of distance, it was pretty obvious. The changes in me too. That I changed from being edified by these people to being controlled by these people.
Okay. Yeah.
You were saying, how was those first season? That first season I was very anxious. So I was ready to throw myself into something. And one thing I did and found here was very friendly evangelicals that I could talk about my group. They were all like, oh yeah, that's awful. That's so awful. But the theology they believed in was kind of the same thing.
Wow.
But I kept myself very busy with these people for the first year or so until I read The Subtle Power of Spiritual Abuse. Then I took a break and said, I'm just going to focus on this now.
Okay. Yeah. And that's been how many years since then?
Oh, yeah, 2010, January.
Wow. So it's been a while that you've been out.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So what do you know now that you didn't know then? whether through time or doing your own work, or all of the interviews that you've been doing. Yeah.
I know that there is a lot of ways that people relate to God, see God, what they consider non-negotiable about their faith, and that in all our behavior, all really, if we're religious, our at the end of the day behavior, when push comes to shove, is based on our view of God, which is why that view of God, what is our idea what this God is like, is crucial.
Yeah. So you become the God that you worship.
Exactly. We become what we worship.
Yeah.
Yes.
But isn't it interesting how many groups say, well, we worship a loving God, so therefore we're loving? But when you nuance that, when you look deeper, it's actually a very conditional love.
It is.
And so if you worship a God who loves you conditionally, then what's your outpouring going to be from that?
Just that, yes. And like in my group, we had our own definition of love.
Mm-hmm.
We're above people judging us. The spiritual man judges nobody and isn't judged or something. God judges him, and clearly he was the most important guy in the world, and so
Yeah.
we were okay. Our way of love was justifiable. Yes, and that is the scary part. The things we are willing to justify after being groomed to believe a certain way. Probably eventually to actions, and that's where it gets scary.
Yeah. And the amount of influence that your religious belief plays, as I look deeper and deeper into spiritual abuse, when you believe so wholeheartedly that someone's eternal salvation is on the line, or the God of the universe expects these things of you, what that will lead us to do in ways that we act towards other human beings. It's kind of an abuse of the mind, of our free thinking, or of our ability to think and act autonomously.
Yeah.
And it's subtle. It's yeah.
You can't have both. You can't have autonomy and control.
No.
Yeah, and that's one other thing that I know now that I didn't know before. The way that church, hierarchical functions, just regular church.
Yeah.
The people never graduate. They're never deemed, oh, now you can make it on your own. Now have a nice life. And if you like this community, come back, but you're okay. You don't need this anymore. So we're kept cheap all our lives. And that, I'm not saying I want to create lone wolves, but I'm saying, David Hayward calls it spiritual independence.
Yeah.
I very much believe in interdependence, but it's like before we get of a certain age, we should all do a course in simple boundaries. Learn to set healthy boundaries.
Yeah.
We need each other, but we also don't need each other for everything. And that's, again, part of the dualism. You can say, I receive that part of you, but not that part.
Yeah.
Or you can tell me this, you can speak into my life, I will receive that, but that part I won't receive. It doesn't jive, or I'm not ready, whatever it is. And that freedom we ought to grant each other.
Yeah, totally. Well, and I know for myself, in coming out of a tradition like this, having to do a lot of my own work around accessing my gut, because I was always taught that. I don't think they called it the gut, but I think it is the gut, what they're talking about. It's fundamentally untrustworthy.
Yes.
And all you can trust is the word of God, which is the Bible, which is the literal interpretation of the Bible.
Yeah, they are literal.
They're little, yeah, exactly. And but how useful that has been to me to learn that I actually have these resources inside of me, and they are trustworthy. And of course, I have responsibility to do my own work, you know. You can be led astray. It's not that, you know, you shouldn't look further, but we all have a responsibility of doing our own work, and as long as we're doing that work, our gut is very trustworthy.
Yes, absolutely. And here's the thing that with people are so afraid. What are they afraid of? They're afraid of making a mistake because you look like a fool in front of other people, or you look like a fool in front of God, whatever, like you made a mistake in the eyes of God. But once you get past this whole fear thing, you realize that what you're looking for, certainty, that's why we flock to people who give us that.
Yeah.
And we learn to think flexibly because it's either right or it's wrong. And this is clearly right, so everything else is wrong. We're losing the ability to think flexibly. And then we have certainty, and we will surely not make a mistake, and we will not be deceived. Well, I have been deceived many times in my life. I fell for scammers, for grifters. I've been deceived by the first girl I made friends with in my first college. And she grifted me for 45 euros, which is not a lot, but like it was a really sad story. But I was so deceivable because I was so needy. But what I'm trying to say is, all the deception that I have experienced, I'm not afraid, honestly, of that happening again. I'm afraid of what I am capable of doing when I'm being deceived. I have seen that in the name of God, I'm able to call up my sister a week before a wedding and tell her, I'm not coming to your wedding because God doesn't want me to go there. Why aren't you getting married by my cult leaders? What if an asteroid falls on the church that night? I have a kingdom to build in my town, and I can't be led astray that way. Wow. That was me, and I did that in the name of God, completely deceived. But had I not, had I just considered the fact that what I'm doing, like my literal behavior, is something I need to look at in spite of my intentions or the narrative I swallow. Like, if I had paused and thought, is this love? And believe me, I had paused and thought, and they have answered for me. It is love to do what God is saying.
Right.
And so God will figure out the rest. Let me be the warning post to everybody else. Follow your gut. I mean, at that point, my gut was so messed up, but I knew this is all so messed up. So messed up. And so that is what I would say. If I'm afraid of anything, it's that in the name of some crazy idea, who knows what else I'm capable of. And my point is, what am I willing to do in the name of God? And where do I draw the line?
Yeah. Yeah. Did you watch the series Nexium by any chance?
I researched it a little bit or I followed the articles I read, but I didn't watch anything.
Okay. I'd be so interested in your...
Well, what's your question? I researched it.
It wasn't really a question, but as I watched it, I had this feeling of, wow, if my 18 or 20-year-old self came into contact with this at a certain time, I would have joined.
Yeah, right. No? You would have known.
Given what was presented.
Yeah, exactly.
Up front. Like, exactly. I hope I wouldn't have gone down to like the whole sex cult thing that it became. Right. But I can't guarantee that, because I'm pretty sure I would have entered the door and probably taken the initial training.
Yeah.
But so that's where the grooming process starts, is looking for people who are wanting more, you know, who are dreaming big, who are upset with the status quo, you know, maybe want some, like, I think I kind of had some of that, like I wanted something special or something unique, which I think is totally normal developmentally as well. So, but that's also really humbling to admit. But it also helps me to go about life humbly, that I'm not immune, and my gut is really, really important, and also being in community with a lot of different types of people, because many of these communities will make your entire community that community. So everyone's feeding into the idea that this is okay, this is normal, you know, this is good. Everyone who doesn't buy into this, they're not made for it, or they have a small mind, or
Right.
not open-minded enough, or
Yeah.
willing for discipleship, or willing for God to use them, or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lukewarm.
Lukewarm. Yeah, totally. There's a Christian words for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
God spits them out. Definitely, there are huge similarities between that Rainer guy and the founder of Nixum, who I believe is in prison now, right? He's been for years and years. He's going to be behind bars, hopefully. But yeah, I can't say that I think he groomed us for a sex cult, but he certainly, everything else is the same. Draw us in, help us recruit more people. And it was all about him, and he had affairs for sure, but he didn't pick on us because we were pretty good Christian kids, and so I think he knew that wasn't the way he could go with us. But we know that, and his wife knows that he's got, this is still going on today. So yeah, it's just a matter of time. I hope that it either implodes, or maybe he'll have a real awakening, an encounter with a God he's so afraid to displease, or tells us it's horrible. What do they always say? It's that Bible verse. It's terrifying to fall into the hands of the living God. And I believe that's probably true, but that's something I've learned from Brad Jerzak. The judgment of God, whatever that is, it's healing. It's as scary as an operation. You may want it, or you may not want it. So that might be the difference between if it's scary or not. But if you go into it knowing this is going to heal me, I think that's what the God that I believe in is like. He heals us. He doesn't hurt us or kill us or whatever is negative.
Yeah. What advice would you give someone who is in something and they're wondering about it?
The gut is so huge. So I would basically talk with the person and have them tell me something about their life that they're sure of. And then help them discover what that feels like when you're really sure of something. And then compare that feeling with, okay, now they're calling you and they're telling you this and it causes turmoil. Compare the turmoil to how sure you felt about this other thing, where you're right, where there's a peace, like in your stomach. It's just like, oh. I would say do that introspection, trust this world here. This is God-given, universe-given, whoever gave it to us, we have it, and it is like a limb. It is like one of the senses. And if we don't exercise it, we're walking around half blind and are vulnerable to go against our own convictions. Yeah, and totally dismiss our boundaries. So that would be it. How does this group literally, physically make you feel?
That's awesome. All right, thank you so much for sharing your story and for sharing about your process. If anyone would like to look at her channel, I will link it in the comments or in the description. So
all right,
Christina.
Thank you, Kelsey. Great to meet you.
You too.